we just got Prismatic this year, right? Which is the first and maybe even only light and dark subclass we'll ever get. It's freaking awesome. Like I'm running Strand Super with the Strand, the Needle, and Arc Grenades, so I can use Getaway Artist, and then I also have that aspect with Devour and Helion when I'm in PvE. So I can have my Arc Buddy with Getaway Artist and the little fire dude with the Helion. And it's freaking awesome. PvE and PvP, I mean, I use Bleak Watcher and Helion. So I have 3 elemental buddies with me when I go into the PvP. That's freaking cool. But like right now we're kind of out of balance with the dark and light subclasses. We have 3 light subclasses and 2 darkness subclasses. And we only have 2 darkness supers per class. So, we only have 2 darkness for a Titan, 2 for Warlock, and 2 for Hunter. But we have a ton more in the light subclasses for each class. With Void, we have a ton of supers, different variants of each one too. So, I'm here to talk about that imbalance. Because we keep getting teased about what the next power could be. It feels like there's more, and when I look at the stuff that they're teasing, and all the darkness abilities we've seen across the past 10 years, like the first time we actually got to use darkness powers and yes, we did get to use them back then because of the raid and some of the weapons and armor we got. We got to use Taken stuff, and we've only grown that arsenal of different darkness abilities since then. Here's what I think about it. Much like the phrase, the greater the light, the greater the shadow, it kind of seems like that might be the case. Our light may be so bright that we may be creating more darkness. That's maybe being reflected in all the powers that we might be able to get. So here are some powers derived from the darkness. As I mentioned already before, Taking, probably the most popular one, and I think the most cool looking one. It's the first true power of darkness we were introduced to, is the ability to move between the ascendant planes and returning transformed. Oryx does this with his claws to take his enemies and transform them into his own weapons. If we read the Grimoire cards, he says stuff like, this is the Taken Acolyte Grimoire card. You are an acolyte, half-grown backbone of the Hive, cunning and ambitious, and crushed beneath your mighty rulers. You have been taken. Stop praying. Give up your recitations. Your faith is fulfilled. You will be strong now. What is your creed? What do you believe? That you may, with caution and care, survive to grow in tribute? That you may one day lead a centuries-long crusade, but you are lightly armed and craven. You hide behind cover and wish for greatness. Glory escapes you. You need help. There is a knife for you. It is shaped like, not alone. Take up the knife. Call on its company. Take your new shape. So, as you can see, they're being carved into something greater, using that knife. You can see that knife analogy being made with most of the Hive pantheon, and now even the Witness, who calls himself the first knife that the Winnower wielded, which kind of makes me think that maybe all these Grimoire cards of all the Taken are maybe the Winnower itself speaking to each enemy. When he says there is a knife for you, it is shaped like no more fear, it is in brackets. So it's giving us a little bit of context and like what they might be talking about. It kind of reflects programming in that way. We have to like close brackets, use parentheses and stuff like that to declare values. And the Winnower kind of fits the bill of someone that could like reprogram the universe. So like Taking is kind of like reprogramming and repurposing beings into a greater weapon. So far in game, we've only seen 2 beings to have the ability to create Taken, or at least send them to a place where they will become Taken. Oryx and the Witness are the only 2 beings to be able to do that. But We have seen characters like Savathun, Malak, Xivu Arath, Nokris, Riven of a Thousand Voices, as well as some other Ahamkara, and Disciples of the Witness, who have been able to take control of Taken forces. So they're not creating Taken or sending them anywhere to be made, they're just controlling the forces that already exist. There is a lore tab in which Marasov experiments with controlling units. I think that's from last year. I think. And there's like this Taken that's just walking around the Dreaming City, and she controls it. Control of the Taken is done via a strong will from one with usually paracausal strength. However, there are some partially Taken beings like Riven, Quoria, and Malak who have been given a certain amount of free will that allow them to take a degree of control of their own actions. Quoria, being a powerful Vex mind, even displayed the ability to control and influence non-Taken Vex units. So it looks like that this Taken power kind of is a vulnerability to the Vex, as they're really reliant on a network structure of being. So Quoria, being a corrupted network, influences them to do things in different ways. We know that the Vex are vulnerable to Taken, like back in the Taken King when they recalled us back to the Vault of Glass to seal a Taken breach. There are also a number of times we've already used Taken power. In Destiny 1, we harvest Oryx's heart to create the Touch of Malice. We also get the Black Spindle, aka the Taken version of the Black Hammer, which then returned in Destiny 2 as the Whisper of the Worm. And on top of that, we also have some legendary weapons too. So we have the Season of the Deep weapons, which are Taken versions of the Reckoning weapons, and the weapons introduced in the Taken Spring update, such as Stolen Will and Dreadfang, when we return to the Prison of Elders and face off Malak, as well as some Taken armor sets in Destiny 1 that are acquired through Eververse. Even though the Grimoire cards explain how the Techians were experimenting with Taken energies to create and imbue them with power. Other instances in which we use the Taken energies for power are times like in the Taken King raid, and in most recent history in Lightfall, and in most recent history in Final Shape, when we are torn between realities, where we're between real space and the Ascendant Plane. We take on a Taken appearance when we are torn between realities, and we're able to interact with certain Taken energies when we're in this state. Same as when we use the Taken power relics, which function as a semi-automatic energy blast that can also be burst of Taken energies, similar to that of the Darkness Blast from the Taken captains. For the most recent example of using those relics, we can look at the Liminality Strike when we use the Taken energies to power up the Ahamkara skulls. Next up, the Power of Nightmares, first introduced in Shadowkeep, power that comes from the mind, harnessing fears and conjuring visions of things we've either faced in the past or are afraid to face in the future. After we conquered our fears in Shadowkeep, we've seemed to have contained them on the moon, save for a few lost sectors across the system. When Callus returned to the solar system with the Leviathan, he parked it right over the moon, and it was infested with egregore, using egregore to establish a link with the pyramid and expand the nightmares into his own territory. At first I thought it could be an attempt to gain these powers, but seeing as in Lightfall he doesn't seem to have any nightmare-based powers, he may not have such abilities. Also in Lightfall, we finally meet Nezarec, brought into the story a few months prior in the Season of the Plunder, where we uncover the relics of Nezarec, which are seemingly radioactive. Nezarec feeds on fear, as he states in the beginning of the boss fight, and since he is tied to our mind and our fears, he's seemingly cosmically immortal, since his power continues to linger across the solar system. Even if you go back to the Thrillodrome using Nezarec's helmet and Nezarec's whisper, he'll chuckle, laugh. You'll hear whispers from him. Eris also wields the nightmares in the Season of the Haunted, when we are bound in the ritual, and using the harvested nightmares combined with our light, we manifest the relics that season to cut down the nightmares. On top of that, Micah 10 brings it up that we could be wielding that power soon enough. in the post-campaign missions. Well, not really post-campaign because it's right before the raid slash excision. When you replay the mission from Shadowkeep, Micah 10 talks about it and says that maybe perhaps it's a power that we could learn to wield one day. And I'm really excited for that because it really does seem like that might be the power we'll unlock first. Next up, Resonance. We're first introduced to Resonance in an official capacity with Rolf, who was the first enemy to present us with the power. A power seemingly coming from pyramid technology and or an understanding of dark powers that come from the Witness. We've seen multiple forms of these powers, from Beyond Light introducing those shielded barriers using pyramid technology, the beams of pyramid geometry first seen in Vow of the Disciple, to the pyramid weapons introduced in Lightfall and Final Shape, such as the portable shield generator that we see the Shadow Legion use, the radial mast, and the floating turrets that typically manifest around the Dread. Most Dread units also sport pyramid tech weapons. That's already 3 powers derived from darkness, and I haven't even talked about Stasis, which we began wielding in Beyond Light, and Eris seemingly discovered at the end of Shadowkeep. In Strand, which we discovered in Lightfall, and upon landing on Neomuna, we already see enemies having overshields powered by Strand. This year we now see enemies wielding Strand and Stasis in the Dread units. Stasis has also been used by the Taken and Scorn, but curiously enough, Hive units do not wield either one. Speaking of the Hive, Hive magic. It's interesting how the Hive have remained with their own powers, sinister but not really true darkness powers. I mean, they call from the deep to use their magics, but we can't really call them dark powers. If you play Destiny 1 for as long as I have, like many, you probably assume that poison or Hive magic would eventually become a subclass. I mean, it's already a damage type in the game. We've had weapons that utilize it since Destiny 1. Thorn, Osteostriga, Necrotic Grips. In the case of Necrotic Grips, we know it involves the use of the K1 artifact, and how the wraps on the arms are actually the ripped skin from the arms of the K1 research team. Hive magic is still compatible with the light, using Void, Solar, and Arc crystals to power different aspects of it. Xivu, Arath, and Eris seem to have the greatest feats of strength when it comes to the use of Hive magics. Eris using the tithes from the Guardians, and Savathun's own reservoir of tithe energy to kick Xivu out of her own throne world. And Xivu Arath's feat of strength would be opening her Dracula-looking cape to let loose her armies on Tour of Battle. So, also, I say Dracula because that artwork is a reference to Dracula artwork, in which Dracula has his cape open across a city, sort of like shrouding the city in darkness. Deepsight. Deepsight is also seemingly linked to Resonance, as it's basically the ability to peer into the past, may it be memories or physical change in space, or like the relic on Mars, recalling an object to take shape. It can also be utilized to unlock memories, like when Savathun traumatized Crow, or when the Guardian traumatized Savathun back, because what the hell? Can't go around doing that to people. Asa also uses the Egregore Coral in Season of the Deep to communicate with us through Sloan. The Egregore connection links this power to the Nightmares as well, because as we saw in Season of the Haunted, Egregore is also used for Deepsight and the Nightmares, giving Resonance, Nightmares, and Strand common ground, as they're all powers based in the mind. Osiris explains this in one of the cutscenes for Lightfall during the campaign. And before we finish, I'd like to mention one more thing. The ability to move planets is apparently linked to the power of taking. However, Savathun was able to enact this on the Traveler using her thread weavers. So, it's not exactly the same, but it looks like solid enough evidence that the power to move worlds is not a taken ability, but rather a whole other thing. Being involved with things like the thread weavers may also link at the Strand. However, it doesn't use... In the Trader's Vessel lore tab, we read about a fight between Savathun and Nezarec, in which it kind of sounds like Savathun uses Strand. The description of the powers she's using sound very familiar to that of Strand. I don't think this is confirmed or not. I think, however, it does make sense if Savathun took the veil from Nezarec and hid it away. You know, so maybe she might have tapped into it while in the presence of the veil, before the veil ended up on the Amuna, of course. The veil is also a pathway to a linking consciousness, the river of souls and threads that bind us all together. It's how the witness was binded together into one being, and it's how the Neomuni communed in the Cloud Arc. The power to move worlds would also be an interesting way of introducing. The power to move worlds also seems like an interesting way to introduce a new destination, because Hive war moons are a thing, and it's been 10 years and we've never seen a Hive war moon in game. And you know, since Xivu is going to be making her way into the story soon, it feels like a great idea to make that the setting for a new expansion. Kind of like stepping foot on the War World or on Apocalypse from, you know, DC Comics. It'd be freaking awesome. So just like, it'd be freaking awesome to just have a Hive war moon looming over us in the solar system. It'd be a great way to kick off Destiny 3 or any new expansion, really. But those are the powers I was able to list off. If there are more possible subclasses, I counted 6 powers. So some of these may or may not be the same part of the same power set. However, it does seem like they could all be their own thing, despite how linked they are. It seems like there's only 4 light abilities. You know, Arc, Solar, Void. We all know those. And the 4th one just being pure light. There aren't many times we get to see pure light being used, but notable moments in which we see it are Gull's death, the Traveler's Restoration, the Traveler's Terraforming Beam in Lightfall, and, you know, the 12 Guardian Kamehameha in Excision. I can't count more than 4 for the possible light subclasses, because I just haven't been able to find anything. I've been looking around for a while, and I haven't been able to find any new light powers. But correct me if I'm wrong, please do. I'll make an addendum about it. But otherwise, if all these powers are eventually added, we could have more darkness powers than light. And that puts us in a really interesting position in terms of cosmic balance inside of Destiny's universe. Bungie has a lot of options if they're working on one final subclass for Destiny 2. I assume if D3 is a thing, they could just leave it for then. But if we do use the subclass inversion theory, Nightmares might be up next. Since Strand is like an inverted Void, Stasis is like an inverted Solar, so maybe Nightmares are an inverted Arc subclass. I'm not really the first to propose this theory. I think this is just a naturally occurring thought in most people's mind, you know, because if you just look at it, just look at an HSL wheel and it makes sense, you know. It's right there in front of us. But until then, we just have no idea what they could be working on. Even though they have been teasing more powers after cracking the game wide open. But yeah, really excited to see where they go with this. But thanks for watching. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I hope you have a great day. So, see you, Guardians.